What is going on, my broskiis? My name is Toadskii, back again, here to bring you guys yet another One Piece Treasure Cruise video. And yeah, there's another new Sugo Fest. And I know what a lot of people are going to say, another Sugo Fest, more characters to pull for. Yeah, it's pretty freaking crazy. Do note though that after this period, there's going to be a really long time of probably not a lot on Treasure Cruise. This was the exact same on Japan. They had literally like Sugo back to back to back to back, lots of new characters released throughout this month. But then afterwards, you know, it took quite a while for things to pick back up. So if you are overwhelmed, I understand, but just know that after this period, it is going to be relatively slow. So do keep that in mind. But here we are with the Whitebeard versus Shanks plus V2 Mako Sugo Fest. Now, this Sugo Fest is split into 3 different parts. You got part 1 where both of them are available. You got part 2 with Whitebeard versus Shanks, and part 3 with Mako. Now, in this video today, we're going to talk about the new rare recruit characters, but I will upload an additional video talking about the Sugo Fest structure in general. But just note though that the part 1 starts on the 26th, and then you've got part 2 on the 27th, and then you've got part 3 on the 28th. So they debut 24 hours after each other. And do note as well that this Sugo Fest, I believe, is a 10% red rate, so it's a 2 times red rate, and I believe there's 30 legends on part 1, and then 20 legends available on parts 2 and 3. So keep that in mind moving forward. We'll talk more about the Sugo Fest stuff in the additional video, but as we said, we want to be jumping into the video talking about all the new characters. We have Whitebeard versus Shanks, of course, which is the highlight of this Sugo Fest. Mako was a bit of an interesting one, because we knew that Whitebeard versus Shanks was coming, but we didn't expect a V2 Mako to be debuting alongside him. That was kind of wacky when we found that out. Then you've got 3 new rare recruits. You've got Ben Beckman, Vista, and Rockstar. So we'll have a look at Rockstar first. This is not Rockstar's first unit in the game, by the way. He actually debuted in Treasure Cruise as a treasure map rare recruit quite a while back. But Rockstar here is a Psy fighter powerhouse with a captain effect that doesn't really matter too much, but a 12-turn cooldown that reduces enemy barriers by 2, and it reduces despair and attack down and chain lock also by 5 turns, changes block into matching and locks those slots for 2 turns. So Rockstar's kind of interesting because there are not a lot of characters in the game that remove barriers by 2, and there's not a lot of characters in the game that lock orbs for 2 turns. So he does those things which are pretty uncommon, plus gives you pretty good utility, despair attack down and chain lock removal by 5. Pretty incredible special, honestly. In terms of crewmate effects, he does make int slots matching for your Psy characters, so that's pretty cool. But in terms of PvP, unfortunately, he does fall short. All these rare recruits are pretty bad in PvP, unfortunately, and his support effect is nothing special either. But honestly, you want to have this guy for his special ability. I think just in terms of special, it's probably like an 8 out of 10 would be what I would probably rank it at. Maybe a 9, because it is kind of unique. You know, barrier removal by 2 is pretty uncommon. So Rockstar, a pretty decent new rare recruit character. The next rare recruit is going to be Flower Sword Vista, getting a new rare recruit. Int Slasher Powerhouse, captain effect doesn't matter. Then we've got his special on a 10-turn cooldown that does 100,000 fixed damage, okay. It reduces Rainbow Shield and Threshold by 2 turns, and it gives you a 1.75 times orb boost. But it says that if you already have an orb boost, it gives you a 1.75 times color affinity boost. So that is actually pretty cool. And the really good thing about it is, as you guys may have seen, he does have double special activation. So when you launch his special twice, you're able to get 200,000 fixed damage, or just 2 hits of 100,000, 4 turns of rainbow and threshold removal, and then a 1.75 orb and color affinity boost. Not bad at all. I don't think it's the most broken special ever. You know, 1.75 in this day and age is kind of whatever, but the fact that he does both of those things in one is pretty good. And the debuff removal is what I don't like, because when you stack it up, it's only 4 turns of removal, and we know that a lot of free-to-play units recently have been like 4-turn debuff removers. And 4-turn debuff removers typically aren't as useful as what you would think. Obviously, they have content based around these new rare recruit characters moving forward, but in general, characters that only remove it by 4 turns are nowhere near as valuable as 5-turn removers, so he's just okay in my book. I definitely think Rockstar will be more valuable in the long term, so I'd probably give this guy maybe a 7 out of 10 in terms of his special ability, and then he does make Psy slots matching for your int characters. So that's a pretty good crewmate effect right there. But, and yeah, in Power Rumble, his effects aren't super great. And of course, his support effect is damage reduction and a stat boosting effect. So that is Vista, a relatively okay rare recruit. But let's move on to the final one, which is going to be Ben Beckman. He's a Psi Cerebral Striker with a captain effect that doesn't matter. 13 turn cooldown, changes empty bomb recovery tandem and unfavorable slots into matching, and then reduces bind by 5, and then gives you a 3x chain lock for 1 turn. But then there's an additional effect at the end that says if you've got a full team of Psi characters, so 6 Psi characters on your crew, it completely removes enemy defense down immunity off of all enemies. So that is the immunity that stops the enemy from being inflicted with defense down. That is pretty freaking cool. Though the condition for fulfilling that is kind of difficult because there aren't going to be too many circumstances where you legit have 6 Psi characters unless if you're building for a very specific thing. Typically these days you'll be having a lot more type variety in your team, but 6 Psi characters, I mean, if you're running like a Psi super type team, obviously it's pretty easy to do. But the fact that he removes defense down immunity is pretty good, as we'll talk about Shanks in a little bit. This guy's pretty decent. Again, a little bit niche because there aren't too many circumstances where you're going to need this special ability, but in terms of utility as well, it only does really provide 5 turns of bind removal. That's it. It does have orb change. It does have chain lock. So I think he's okay. He's probably like around a 7, probably the same as Vista. I do think Rockstar probably is the best rare recruit because the overall utility that you get out of him, I think, is going to be more valuable. Where you can get your damage from a lot of other characters, but utility is the key thing, right? So Ben Beckman seems okay. He does have an effect here that sets all slots to Psi at the start of the quest, so that's a pretty awesome effect to have. And then his support effect is nothing great there, and it's only 13% HP. Like HP boosting supports aren't super valuable, so it is what it is. And then his PvP stuff is like not really that crazy. It's only like a single target fixed damage dealing, so not really too great. But those are the new rare recruits of the batch. I think Rockstar's probably my favorite, but they all have their uses, of course. But let's have a look at the Sugofest exclusives. So, of course, I did mention that they are Sugofest exclusives. These 2 characters are actually going to be available on literally every, normal Sugofest moving forward. And I say every, but I mean like any regular Sugofest, they do have the chance to appear. They're not limited banner units like what we've seen with the Super Sugos or the Kizuna Sugos. These are just regular batch rare recruit legend characters, right? So even if you don't pull them here, they're going to be available in a lot of banners moving forward. Specifically Whitebeard versus Shanks. I know a lot of people will be excited for this guy, but do note that this character, I believe, should be available in the next Treasure Map Sugofest, I believe. So keep that in mind if you are wanting to pull here. But let's have a look at the first Sugofest exclusive, which is Marco V2, who is a super type character. He's a super int character, and he is int, powerhouse, and cerebral. And his captain effect, you know what, actually, because I know what Marco does, let's have a look at his special ability first, and then it may put into context what his captain ability does. So his special ability first, 13 turn cooldown, reduces the slot change impossible by 3. If you don't know what that is, that's the effect of where your slots are put into like a barrier and you have to hit a good, a great, or a perfect to unlock the slot. This special removes 3 turns of those slot barrier things. That's pretty cool. This is the first character in the game that's able to do that. Very unique, though in instances that actually can be a bit annoying because you can actually use it to your advantage. If you know you're going to be inflicted with that, you can generate your slots beforehand, like getting a full board of recovery, getting them locked, and then you just have recovery for the rest of the fight. Or you could have like just a full board of matching or a full board of Wano slots, you can use that to your advantage, So I don't know how useful that particular effect is going to be. But on top of that, it does reduce paralysis and special bind by 7 turns, which is very good. And then it heals the crew by 50 times his recovery that does overhealing. So that is also really, really nice. But then it also says, if your HP is 50% or below when you launch the special, it gives your Psi, Int, and Powerhouse characters a 2.5 times color affinity boost. But if you're above that threshold of 50%, it's just going to be a 2 times color affinity boost. But yeah, you predominantly want to use the special ability below 50% to get the 2.5 color affinity. That's ridiculous. But then it also says if you are already going to be having your color affinity active, it's going to be a plus 1.2 to the chain for 1 turn as well. So when you think about it, this guy does a lot of things. Overhealing, slot change impossible removal, paralysis, special bind, color affinity, and chain boost. Like, this guy does a lot of stuff. But of course, there are some things in here that are a bit situational and a bit niche that might not always be useful, of course. So overall, special ability is very, very good though. But let's go back now to his captain effect, because his captain effect, as you can see, it's quite lengthy, but it's not really that complex. So first of all, 5 times attack to int if you're at full HP, 4.5 otherwise. Remember, if you are overhealed, that is classified as full HP, so you can understand why it's like that. But then it does boost all other characters by a 4 times boost and a 1.3 health boost as well. And it also generates overhealing as a captain. So he has like the Luffy Sanji effect as a captain. You do get guaranteed overhealing, always active. But then it also says once per quest, if you fall below 30% health, he automatically uses his special ability on the following turn. Now, I believe that does only activate once per quest. Yes, it does mention that. He only activates that once per quest. So once per quest, when you fall below 30%, you get his special ability to activate, which of course, when you're below that threshold of 50%, you get the big color affinity boost, and you get the huge healing. But remember, is that when it automatically launches his special, that does not affect his special cooldown. So effectively, you're able to use his special with his captain effect, and then use his special with his regular special. And remember that if you've already got a color affinity boost active, you're actually going to go ahead and get the 1.2 chain boost as well. So you can see how this kind of works, and the way that it's structured, and the way you're supposed to use this guy. It does seem a little bit situational, and I don't know how much of a fan I am of this unit, honestly, but on paper, he does still seem relatively useful. But let's have a look at his super type. It will activate if you're below 50% health, so pretty easy condition. And then when you do activate it, you're able to get a full board of int slots and then remove the recovery down status completely off of the crew. It's not an amazing super type special, but it's okay. I don't really see it being that bad. It's just fine, honestly. So that's it overall. I mean, he does have this effect in his crewmate to completely evade special bind, so you can use him as a sub to always remove special bind, which is great. He doesn't have fear resistance though, keep that in mind. But another really good key component of this character is, yet again, we have another int character that gets access to the hunger limit break potential ability. Very uncommon for int characters, so it's nice that we get this back. So at max level, it removes 3 stacks of hunger, very nice. He also has ship bind for some unknown reason by 5, and he does have recovery bind resistance by 10, which does make sense for the character. And let's have a look at his support effect. It attaches to Ace, Jozu Vista, and Whitebeard himself, and at max level, at the start of the final battle, it gives you 3000 healing, and it does overheal as a support. This is the first overhealing support that we have. Pretty awesome, actually, though I don't know how useful it's actually going to be, but you know, it does only attach to very, very niche units, so I don't know how often this support's actually going to see play. But overall, pretty interesting set of abilities. Let's have a look at his PvP stuff. His passive in PvP: int characters level 5 speed and blow away % up level 5, which is pretty uncommon. And then for the first 30 seconds, your int characters get level 3 CT increase. That's a very good passive. I mean, speed plus CT increase is a really good combination. I don't know how useful the blow away % is going to be, but his passive overall does seem pretty good. And then his special ability on a 31 CT, enemies in a large range for 2 times his attack. And then when his HP is 50% or less, in a medium range, 2.5 times recovery healing to your crew, and then enemies in a large range for level 5 defense down. So if he's below 50% and he launches that special, that's pretty incredible. Damage, healing, and defense down, pretty awesome, though it is a bit, you know, niche, and 31 CT is like on the cusp of it being a little bit too long in my opinion. But for a healing of 2.5, that's actually pretty decent, especially if you have some sort of way to increase that recovery. But increasing recovery in PvP is not a very good thing to do. But honestly, that's fine. If you have like cotton candies and stuff, like that's definitely going to be like, you know, around closer to 1500, I would say, with everything said and done. So honestly, not terrible, but it just seems okay. You know, that's Marco, right? Marco's a pretty good unit. I'm not super excited about him. I'm more excited about this guy right here. So here we are with Whitebeard versus Shanks. So Whitebeard versus Shanks, of course, is another versus unit, the third versus unit in the game. Let's break this down. We've obviously got a lot to talk about here with it's essentially 2 new units. So Whitebeard, int striker powerhouse. Captain effect will boost Psi, int, and striker characters by 5 times flat, 1.2 health, increases chance of int slots appearing and makes them beneficial, plus 20% damage reduction. I mean, the combination of health plus damage reduction is really good, flat 5x, and then just high chance of slots. Like, this is a great captain effect, very basic, but very good captain effect. And then you look at his special ability, 13 turn cooldown will boost Psi, Int, and Striker characters' base attack by plus 1000. This is crazy, by the way. Remember that we have characters that have increased their base attack in the past, but typically it only targets one character. This character does it for Psi, Int, and Striker characters. The whole crew is able to get this. This is a pretty substantial increase because a plus 1000 base attack really increases your damage potential. Like, that is incredible. But on top of that, he will give those characters a 2.5 times attack boost as well. And then if the HP of the enemy with the highest max HP is 80% or above, it does a 30% health cut. However, if the HP of the highest enemy is below 80%, it's a 2 times orb boost to Psi, Int, and Striker characters instead. So you can actually get different special effects depending on the situation. Now you may think like that's a little weird, like that means you need an additional health cut in order to potentially get that orb boost, but you are able to get that because of his versus effect. His versus effect is able to activate after you've consumed 10 Psi Int slots, and it reduces damage taken by 90% for 1 turn, and it reduces all enemies' health by 30%. So you may think for a versus effect, it doesn't seem that exciting, and I would probably agree with you, but you gotta remember, 90% damage reduction is pretty crazy, plus the enemy cannot react to a versus effect, and the enemy cannot remove any beneficial effect you get from a versus effect. This is pretty incredible. Another thing you have to note though, is that typically versus effect lasts for a long time, right? Like you've got like, versus Kaido, who has this effect that lasts for 3 turns. I think Big Mom's also for 3 turns, right? And then Ace Akainu, like, I know like Akainu is like a 4-turn conditional, right? And those effects last for a long time. However, this effect is like a 1-turn activation and that's it. So once that turn expires, you can start charging up his versus effect again very quickly. So you're able to launch this likely multiple times per quest depending on the situation. So this is a pretty interesting versus effect that I think is kind of overlooked a lot of the time. But remember, if you are able to launch that and you are able to health cut the enemy, and then you launch his special, you get the orb boost, plus the attack boost, plus the base stat boost. Just overall, an incredibly powerful special for increasing your damage on your crew. As for crewmate stuff, int slots are matching for the crew, base stat increase, you've got slot bind reduction by 5, you've got pinch healing, which is incredible, and then enrage, and then of course his PvP stuff. So Whitebeard in PvP. His ability gives your int characters level 5 health, level 5 attack, and then if you're below 50%, he gives himself level 7 defense. Below 50%, this guy just ain't gonna die. That's pretty incredible, honestly. And then of course his special ability on an 18 CT, it does a lot of different things, but of course it does a 10% health cut in a large range, and then it targets your int type teammates for level 3 defense and then level 5 attack for 15 seconds. That's a pretty good special, and then when the time remaining is less than 50 seconds, he does a medium range 1 times his attacker's damage. That's like just kind of additional, but the fact is 18 CT for health cut, defense up, attack up, pretty awesome. If you're able to have CT increase as well, you can make sure that you can like cycle through it. So you can have like multiple stacks of a defense and attack up, depending on how much CT increase you have. That's pretty good. I'm a relatively big fan of this unit. He's more a defensive unit, obviously. He doesn't do that much damage, but when you have his passive and his special working together, plus if you have other characters that surround him, this could potentially be a very, very good effect. He could potentially work with Moria, for example, who's another int and powerhouse character. So, you know, there's some synergy out there for sure. So that's Whitebeard, of course. And then let's go over to Shanks now. So Shanks is the other part of this effect. And Shanks is a Psi, Slasher, and Cerebral. So his captain effect is a Psi, Int, and Slasher characters 5x boost, 1.5 times health this time. And he also does the Psi slots appear more often, makes them beneficial, and heals 0.5 times recovery for every perfect that you hit. What a captain effect. This is a very good captain effect. I'm not 100% sure on how often the slots will be appearing as a captain, but if they appear anything close to what Carrot is, yeah, this guy's going to be an absolute monster. So that's his captain effect. Let's have a look at his special, 13 turn cooldown. will boost Psi, Int, and Slash's base attack by 1000. Also will say for 1 turn, boost their slot effects by 2.5 times. And changes all slots, including block, into matching, and then sets the enemy's defense to 0 after 1 turn has passed. Right, so this is a full board matching slots plus a 2.5 orb boost, and then adding 1000 base stats on top of it. Wow, very good special. Plus, like that additional effect of reducing enemies' defense to 0 after 1 turn has passed. You may think that's really weird, and it is, but the versus effect obviously is why that is the case. Versus effect, same condition as before. Sets enemies' defense to 0 for 3 turns. Now, it says for 3 turns, but remember, that doesn't, like, the defense reduction doesn't go through multiple stages. It's only a debuff to that enemy on the stage, so, you know, it's for 3 turns for a reason. And also, we'll go ahead and boost damage dealt against defense down characters by 1.75 for 3 turns. So this is where that special came in. So after 1 turn has passed, so ideally, you kill that stage after using the versus effect, and then on the last stage, the clock buff will expire, giving the defense down to the enemy, and then you get this conditional boost still active, because remember, versus effects cannot be removed from the enemy, so you can have the 1.75 on stage 4 hypothetically, carry it into stage 5, and it will still be there. So you can get a lot of really cool things off with this versus Shanks unit, and then he makes Psi slots beneficial, 100 base stat bonus, and then his PvP stuff. So Shanks in PvP for Psi characters, level 5 health, level 5 attack, and then level 7 defense to himself when he's below 50%, essentially the same passive as Whitebeard, and then the special on a 29 CT. Side teammates get level 4 defense for 20 seconds, and then enemies in a large range, 1000 fixed damage dealt. But then when the time is 50 seconds or less, he does a 2000 fixed damage in a large range. So you can potentially get 3000 fixed damage in a large range, and a level 4 defense increase. Again, more of a defensive style unit, but it is good. This is a unit that definitely could see play, for sure. I don't know how often he's going to see play on an offensive style team, but defensively, if you want to build a somewhat of a defensive team for Psi, this could be a really good addition to those types of teams. But with all of that being said, guys, that is the rundown of all the new batch characters. I think Whitebeard versus Shanks is an incredible legend. I think he's kind of overlooked a lot of the time. I think Whitebeard versus Shanks is a character that is good on paper, and the thing is a lot of people see, you know, Roger, they see Yamato even right now as well, all these final tap characters that are a little bit more hype. A lot of people kind of just overlook this other batch, but this batch is good. There's the rare recruits are relatively powerful, Marco's an interesting and unique legend, and then you got Whitebeard versus Shanks, which can boost Psi, Int, and either Striker or Slasher characters depending on the situation, and of course Psi and Int are 2 of the best colors in the game for sure, and this is just an additional support batch for those characters. So that's the rundown of everything, guys. I really hope you guys have enjoyed this one. I expect another video relatively soon breaking down the Sugo Fest structure. I really hope you guys have enjoyed this one, and if you guys did enjoy it, make sure you go ahead and leave a like, and if you want to stay up to date with all the content that I post, including more One Piece Treasure Cruise content, make sure you hit the subscribe button down below. But other than that, guys, I'll see you guys within the next video.